So, welcome to the Meadow Podcast. Today, we can talk about what's top of mind for us. So, we have a record breaking day today. We have four clients in the center, and a lot goes into that behind the scenes. Yeah, maybe you share what's top of mind for you. How are you thinking about both the business and the landscape of psilocybin? What's next for us, or what's most interesting, do you think?
What's top of mind for me? I mean, making sure that the clients safely proceed through their journeys today. They're all very well supported by very experienced facilitators and with Nina, our service center representative, who also has a clinical background as a registered nurse. So everybody's in really good hands. And really just about how to make all of our processes better is what is top of mind for me today. So, yeah, as we get busier and we have more clients coming through the center, I care a lot. I'm like quite anal retentive. And this is like, I like where I feel like I'm running a surgery center and that it's like surgeries that we're preparing for. It's, unlike classical surgery, it's or conventional surgery, it's mind surgery. And so, for it, there is this, stepwise increase in complexity whenever you add more folks coming in. So, and just making sure that we've dotted all our I's and crossed our T's when it comes to, regulation, compliance, and then safety, and not letting adherence to those things detract from the experience from the client too, which I find to be the case in conventional healthcare. There's so much attention on those aspects of care and we start to forget like the human aspect
Yeah.
of things. And so one of my goals in creating Meadow was to take on all of the burden of those aspects of the care so that facilitators can really drop in and be present with clients for the real work, the
Yeah.
real reason why
Yeah.
people are here. So, really trying to make all of the back of the house processes super seamless. And also, I care so much about safety. I never want to have an incident where we misdose somebody, which has happened at other centers.
Mm.
I just have zero tolerance for it. And so so much of my energy is put towards how do we create a system that is foolproof?
Mhm.
Because it's about the systems. And I just distinctly remember when I was new in my first job out of fellowship as a surgeon and I just felt like the system was not set up for supporting me as a surgeon and supporting patients. And so I care a lot about creating a system that allows people to thrive. And I received really beautiful reflection from one of our facilitators today, Michael Kelly, who just expressed a lot of gratitude and shared that all of our facilitators just have a lot of gratitude for us for what we put in for making this place run. And so, yeah, I think it's really, we've gotten to, I think, well beyond minimum viable product at this point, and really like, taking the service and the care to the next level. And one of the ways that we're doing that is by adding a separate preparation pathway, like an optimization pathway for people who are on medications that make it so that they're not optimized for psilocybin journey, whether those medications are a hard contraindication, meaning that they're just unsafe to take psilocybin, or the medications that they're taking would severely blunt or diminish the experience, at least the subjective experience of the journey. And so how can we optimize you, help you get off of those medications in order to have a psilocybin journey.
Mm.
So we're in active development right now of a program to support people who fall into that category. And we're bringing on another team member, a colleague of mine from Trek. That's the psilocybin facilitator training program that I trained in 3 years ago. And so she is going to help me develop just this awesome program for clients to really help them get optimized. So these are folks who are typically, I would say, like the most typical candidate would be someone who's taking an SSRI and really desires to come off of the SSRI. They've been looking at psilocybin, looking to do deeper healing work with psilocybin and they just need some help with tapering off of the SSRI or SNRI, or maybe it's a benzodiazepine, whatever it is, and looking for that extra level of support that maybe don't get from their prescribing providers, and really prepare the whole nervous system for a psilocybin macrodose. And what we do in the tapering process is support clients with microdosing coaching. So we help coach clients on understanding what microdosing is, how to do microdosing safely and properly, and how to use it to support the nervous system as it's adapting to coming off of these psychiatric medications. So, and we use microdosing as a bridge therapy. I've shared about that. I'm really excited about microdosing as a bridge therapy. It's a whole new
Modality, would you say?
yeah, modality is probably a good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So from a real high level, we worked a lot on this, but I think of it as we have the drugs that people are taking that are dangerous, the ones that are potentially blunting to the experience, and then the ones that don't likely have an effect. And then we categorize those and have
Well,
a
I would categorize them as meds that are dangerous, meds that, and you have to be off of them, meds that severely blunt the experience. So you should probably come off of them. Then there's medications that just require a short hold
right.
for whatever reason. An example of that would be a GLP-1 agonist. So someone's taking Ozempic or Wegovy or something like that. Well, for say weight loss, that is going to lead to a delay in onset of the journey and then an unpredictable length of the journey. So people who are on GLP-1s and take psilocybin, they may not feel the psilocybin kick in until several hours later. And then it ends up being a long journey because of the delayed gastric emptying with those drugs. So we have clients, depending on the half-life of the drug, hold the drug for anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks before the journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah. How much of what you feel like we've developed in our protocol has been from the public available scientific papers and clinical research versus how much has been more of a subjective, hey, this is what we've seen from helping hundreds of people?
Oh, well, none of it is backed by clinical evidence
Yeah,
because the
there's very
clinical
little, right?
trials
Yeah.
are in people who are cherry picked and screened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because you have to have a standard population within which to do the experiment, you want to control for all of those factors. So a lot of it is, based on anecdotal experience and then also just theoretically, what do we know about this pharmaceutical medication in terms of its mechanism of action, its pharmacokinetics, its pharmacodynamics. Okay, based on that information, we can guess
Yeah.
how we should manage the medication. But I mean, I'm part of a group of clinicians who are also psilocybin facilitators, and we have these discussions all the
Yeah.
time, and it's largely theoretical.
Yeah. And experiential, right? What they're seeing with their clients. I mean, it could be
Well, yeah, you make a
small.
theoretical guess about what you should do or what you can do, and then you give mushrooms, and I mean, it's
Say,
experimental.
yeah, which is all science really is. It's just trying it and seeing what the results are.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it is just risk stratification, just understanding, look, here are the risks, here are
Mhm.
the likelihoods, and then informing the client about that and letting them make an informed decision within reason.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Don't give them the possibility to hurt themselves. But
Well,
if
yeah, I'm
they,
not going to tell a client like who's taking lithium, like, oh, you could
yeah,
have a seizure if you take
yeah,
psilocybin and
yeah,
lithium, but it's your choice. No, I'm
yeah,
not going to give it up for some
yeah,
psilocybin.
yeah, yeah, totally. If the risk is like blunting, well, maybe that's a risk you take, right? Worst case scenario, as you
Well,
say. So,
that's a good question. I mean, for me, if there's one, and with blunting medications, I mean, again, it's all, I mean, we have one, I think, trial on psilocybin in clients who are taking SSRI or SNRI, and it's small. I think it's like 19 patients.
hmm,
So, but the thing with these medications is that, like, there's a spectrum of blunting effects. So mildly blunting to it prevents you from launching, and then it's unknown, in what percentage of patients or clients that happens. So you just don't know.
yeah,
So I can roughly, guess that, oh, you have about a 1 in 3 chance of having some degree of blunting.
yeah. It is fascinating to think about because is we're like categorically we're saying what is the likelihood that you have a somewhat negative experience? everything from like, oh, it was mildly blunted all the way to nothing happened, or then on the spectrum of this was like a dangerous thing. But then on the other side of it is I've seen people that are sharing their stories online about using microdosing or psilocybin for healing heart conditions. And this woman was in a car crash that has been sharing her story that we shared in our group, and she is paralyzed from like the chest down, and she's using psilocybin microdosing and saying she can start to feel her legs again.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, man, what are the limits to what are the areas that we always say people categorize psilocybin as being most useful often for anxiety and depression and PTSD trauma, which it is, but also the physical healing potential of it is really
That to
exciting.
me is very exciting. I mean, Andrew Weil has always said that I heard him say like, "Oh, I think there's so many more applications for psychedelics outside of
Hmm.
mental health conditions." Because there's so many health conditions that are mind body. I mean, that is, anything to do with the central peripheral nervous system makes sense that psilocybin is going to affect that. But also, I think anything with mind body connection, like chronic skin disease or gut health problems, musculoskeletal health problems. Yeah, there's going to be a whole host of applications because the mind and body are not separate.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, it is interesting. And even the heart, I mean, that's not even in your mind, obviously. If you're paralyzed, there's a situation where your brain is not talking to your nerve cells on your body through your nervous system, but the heart is totally different. And so for people to
It's
have,
not totally different though. Like your
mm,
brain talks to your heart through neurons.
mm,
So, like,
yeah,
that's
true.
right? Like, so if there are many different cardiac conditions that are stress related.
Right. And why does that happen? Why would their heart, what is it that their heart starts beating irregularly? Or like, what is the most classic case of someone having a heart attack from being stressed? Like, what's going on there? Is it the stress is causing cortisol or their body? Like, why does stress affect us so much? I guess I think.
Well, there's a sympathetic nervous system response. So,
Hmm.
the response to stress, a stressor, you have a stress response. And that's, where our nervous system is largely either in a parasympathetic, that's the rest and restoration nervous system state, or it's in the fight or flight stress
Hmm.
response state. And so we're always shifting between the two of those. And so if you're chronically stressed, well, you're chronically sympathetically in your sympathetic nervous system. Well, that there's a whole hormonal
Yeah, yeah,
cascade that
yeah,
goes along with that. So there's increased cortisol, increased
yeah.
norepinephrine,
Hmm.
noradrenaline. I mean, there's a whole very well characterized stress response state. The problem is that that's a stress state. That's a catabolic state. You're going to be breaking, just like powering through and breaking down stuff when you're go, go, go. Like any high performance athlete, for example, it would be like constantly training and never resting. So you have to downshift and go into the parasympathetic nervous system state because at the cellular level, you are rebuilding what had wear and tear during the stress
Right.
response state. So
Yeah.
if you're chronically in the wear and tear mode and never in the restorative mode, like, yeah,
Yeah. What
that
happens?
leads to disease long term.
Yeah, yeah, totally. That makes sense. And maybe it's a thing where in the world today, our bodies and minds just don't properly calibrate to the outside world. Like if we were in, evolutionarily in the Saharas, or where our bodies were largely evolved in that stimulus, then we would recognize when the threat is no longer there. Like, okay, the wolf is gone. We can calm down. We've done this a million times over the last, however many years. Our bodies have been calibrated to that particular response. And even now, as like a young child, if you see a snake without even being told, or a spider, they freak out. So it's in us to get triggered, and it's in us to get relaxed when things aren't in that state. But then we have these abstract stressors like jobs and the economy and all these things that just like stress people out. But it's not like a physical, like how often do we talk to people that are scared physically? pretty rare. Like they're never like,
No, 95% of stressors are
yeah,
psychological.
yeah. It's almost existential. I'm scared of what the future may bring or the past,
It's
depression, maybe.
usually interpersonal relationship conflict,
Yeah.
whether it's at work or in your marriage, or I mean, that's a big bucket.
hmm Yeah. And people feel just unsettled from that. And so is it the fact that it's unsettled and they're just, but I would think in that situation, that's been going on forever. Like why? It must be more than just
I
interpersonal.
I think it's because we don't have like there's a concept of eustress. At some level of physical stress is good for us, right? That's why
hmm
you have people now signing up for Tough Mudders and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah. I
like
did it.
that, right? Because like there's not enough physical stress.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a farmer
Yeah.
set up, like
Even
sign up.
exercise. People, we didn't exercise as a species until
Right,
recently.
exactly. When you're a hunter gatherer or
Yeah.
even a farmer, you're physically depleted by the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Imagine
So
a
you
farmer
don't
going to a gym.
Yeah, that's like a joke. So now actually I think and so a lot of our stress I think is we're not calibrated properly. And
Mm,
so things that actually aren't a big deal, we're responding as if they're a big deal because we don't have the proper calibration. And so actually what we should be doing is seeking out pain,
yeah.
seeking
100%.
out hard experiences and challenging ourselves in order to reset our stress response system so that when you and I see this a lot for people just like having gone through medicine, right? It's like, okay, I went through surgery training. Like people are literally dying or
Mhm.
losing limbs. So it's a life and limb. And then once you train in that situation, it's like, oh, you it just recalibrates you so that okay, my kid falls and I don't know, gets like a bloody nose or whatever it
Mhm.
is. It just like doesn't phase me at all,
Mhm.
because I've been conditioned in a particular way, and so I think yeah, a lot of us we actually. This goes back to this idea as a Stanford neuroscientist. I want to maybe we'll look up her name and put it in the show notes, but there's a Stanford neuroscientist. She has a TEDx talk on what's called the plenty paradox. And I think she also wrote the book Dopamine Nation. But and the plenty paradox is that if you look at wealthier, materially more wealthy nations, the populations tend to be less happy, less satisfied, more mental health conditions, and that sort of thing. And that's paradoxical because you think, oh, you have all of your needs met, like you should be
Yeah.
happier
Yeah.
and there
Yeah.
should be more well-being. And it's paradoxical, and part of it is because we live in these systems now. It's like almost parasitic systems that profit off of hijacking our dopamine in
Mhm.
any number of ways, whether it's food or video games or the sex industry or any of these things. And so we're all just chronically depleted.
Mm.
And so, and the thing about getting your dopamine fix is that if you get a high from something, you don't you have the high from the hit, and then it's not like you just go back to a baseline. Your baseline actually resets a little lower so that you
Yeah.
actually
Yeah. Yeah.
need an even bigger hit just to get and eventually that's how you torture your dopamine system. This is how addiction happens because your baseline keeps resetting lower and lower and lower after the abnormal high, and so which is the body's feedback system
Right.
working like it's
Right. Right.
supposed to. And so you need just ever bigger hits in order just to get to the baseline that you used to be before. And this is how a classic example of this would be like a sex or porn addiction. It's like, oh, you just start watching porn, you get off, you get your dopamine high, and then but then your baseline keeps dropping. Now you need ever more stimulating, and that's where you get just the really bizarre fetish like behavior because you need an even bigger stimulus in order to get off. And
Right.
so and then before you know it, you're, like, in the gutter. I heard a social, commentator actually describing this effect. So the way that to reset your baseline for dopamine is actually to seek out pain. Instead of seeking out pleasure, you're seeking out
Mhm.
pain. And every time you seek out
Oh,
pain,
you're pushing.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
sucks, but your baseline sets a
Yeah.
little bit higher than
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And you get more pain, and then it's a little bit higher. So this is where the idea of like contrast therapy, like cold plunges and stuff comes in, right? Or the Tough Mudder, like we talked about. We actually seek out pain and challenge in order to reset. And so, and I think that I'd like to understand this a little bit better, but with resetting dopamine with psilocybin, because in many ways, the psilocybin journey is tough,
Right.
is challenging. And so when you come out of it, there is an aspect to the experience where you're like, oh, I'm glad that's done.
Right.
And I feel like, like, oh, I'm through that challenge, and wow, what a relief
Right.
it is. And so it sort of resets you in that way. There's a lot at play. There's so much focus with psilocybin on serotonin receptors, but it actually has activity across a whole host of neurotransmitters. There's just a lot of focus on the 5-HT2A serotonin receptor because that's the receptor that seems to mediate the psychedelic effects of psilocybin and other psychedelics. But it has effect across a whole host of neuroreceptors in the body.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about it when you especially feel with alcohol or porn or gambling or any of these things that you're especially prone to the addictive feedback loop when you start off your baseline low. Like if you and I were to go to an event tonight and drink and we're just baseline zero, that feedback loop is not likely to occur. But if you're feeling like terrible and you use this to bump it up, now the differential there is bigger, and so the feedback is more likely to occur because two people could consume the same amount of alcohol over a year, this same frequency, and have a completely different reaction to it because of how their baseline going into it. So it's almost like if you want to come out of it, the optimal strategy would be like, as soon as I feel good, then do something hard. Instead of doing,
Mm-mm-mm.
instead the other way around. So it's like, oh, today was a good day. Now I'm gonna go and do like a 6 mile run, and getting into that pattern like builds. It's almost like a spiral
This
where it
is why I
goes up.
love lifting heavy weights.
Yeah,
Like, I just
yeah,
think lifting heavy weights are just, yeah, you're taxing your central nervous system and you're just like doing hard things, like seek out, hard things. And that's what's so interesting too about just pain versus suffering.
yeah,
Like pain is just a sensation.
yeah, yeah,
Suffering is a story that we put on top of
100%.
it.
Yeah,
And so no matter what you're going through, the suffering comes from the story. This came up in the group coaching this past week with one of our clients who's dealing with a physical issue that she's dealt with for 38 years, as she put it. I was trying to help her see that a lot of the suffering that she was experiencing is in her relationship and the story that she has with the physical condition. Yeah, like the classic example is a woman who's having the pains of childbirth, right? Which are arguably the most intense pain that a human can experience. And yet, women voluntarily go through this experience unmedicated to be fully present
yeah.
with the pains. And why is that?
You did it.
Yeah, twice.
Yeah, yeah,
Why is that? Well, I know for me, I just wanted to be fully present with it, and I knew there's nothing to be scared of with that the pain is in service of helping to bring my child earthside. And I didn't want to interfere in terms of my choice of going on Medicaid. I didn't want to interfere with any of the hormonal cascade that goes along with that entire process. And so even though it was indeed I feel like I've blacked out from both experiences to some extent in terms of the intensity of the pain, although as that like that the exquisite bliss that it was to hold my child in my arms after the contrast of the intensity of the pain. There's nothing like it, nothing like it. And I've done a lot of psychedelics.
yeah, yeah,
It's like a 5-MeO DMT experience.
yeah,
Like to me, that's what to me 5-MeO DMT is an opportunity for men to experience childbirth in some way,
yeah,
as close as a male-bodied human can get to it. It's just exquisite, and there are no words. But yeah, it's I think a lot of, we want to do some more work when it comes to folks who are dealing with chronic pain. I just got a referral from another orthopedic surgeon of a patient of his who had a total hip replacement and is dealing with some chronic pain. And he thinks that there's definitely, psychological component to it. And when you talk to most people with chronic pain, they would acknowledge that there's a whole identity that develops around the pain. And so when that's what's so cool about working with psychedelics, because psychedelics is about identity work,
Hmm.
or really core belief work. And it's like, what are the core beliefs deep down that we're sort of running our whole operating system off of,
Hmm.
and the identity, and then the thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors are all downstream of that. And so
Hmm.
if you really want to get to high leverage change, it's like do work at the identity layer.
Yeah, super interesting. I actually was having a conversation with Claude AI this morning on the car ride over here because I was really interested in this idea of redemption, which is the very predictable path that people feel after their lives are in total despair. So when you're at proverbial rock bottom, you've lost everything or your life is in absolute chaos, then there seems to be people find God and they find their spirituality and faith. And I, I was trying to understand that deeper.
Mm.
Why is it the case when you have nothing, then your life seems to you seem to connect with God again? Like religion becomes a bigger part of you, reconnect literally with the universe. And there's certainly people who feel this calling when their lives are destroyed in one way or another. It could be like their family dies, or they have some life threatening illness, or they're in a war torn area. But also in cases that are less severe, like monks, right, will give up all of their belongings and they'll have nothing. So they'll end up in the same basic state where I have no objects. I have maybe no relationships with people around me. And both of those scenarios, it's not just the pain. It's almost like if you take away the pain of it, it's the having of nothing to being disconnected from it all. And the thought was that the 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 situation of having nothing removes the barriers to realize that you and the world are not separate. And the egos, I don't even love that word, but we grow these identities. I am this person and I'm entitled to these objects and the way that people should treat me. And when all that's gone, it removes the barricade for you to feel connected to the world.
It removes the illusion that you were totally embedded in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right,
I
right.
mean, would you say, I mean, I don't know if you'd say it that way, but
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I feel it. I mean, we all feel it, right? We feel like, okay, I'm of this particular status and this particular relationship to other people. But if that were to be gone, it's almost hard to even imagine if it were gone. But if it were gone, then what would you be left with? Who would you be left connected to? And it would be what there is. It's
it's just pure awareness. Well, you strip away who you are, where you are, like,
yeah.
yeah, all of those things. I think Joe Dispenza's meditation is this, like, I
Yeah.
am no one, no thing, and no
Hmm.
time and no place. Well,
Hmm.
then what's left?
Hmm.
It's just a consciousness,
Hmm.
awareness.
Which psychedelics also do. They bring you to that same place. Um,
Sometimes, not always.
Sometimes, yeah. And then why sometimes and not always? Yeah, so it's like is that almost an unconscious driver? And because why are human beings at war, really? Like why when there's multiple wars going on in the world? What is like because I'm interested in this almost at the tip of the spear with this work is what is consciousness individually and how does the individual experience of consciousness form into the bigger societal
Collective
consciousness, yeah,
consciousness.
collective, which embodies its own characteristics, but also has to be true on an individual level. There's nothing other than the individual, but then collectively we form the collective. And so what is drive? It's not like we don't have enough food. Human beings we're not stuck with a challenge of survival anymore. So, but yet we still fight multiple times all over the world. So there's positions of power, right? But you can look at it through different lenses. And one of them is that when human beings are disconnected from God across a large civilization, there tends to be a schism where one group wants to reconnect with God. And the other group, the like scientifically minded, secular, materialistic group, they'll split. And this is actually true in the US, in in Iran and in Israel, there's a very similar characteristic where they're splitting across conservative and progressive spiritual lines. And I think that that's sort of like, how does that map onto us? I think the connection to, we say God, connection to the universe that you feel, you almost urge, you have this desire to get back to that.
Mm.
And if you don't have a pathway, like you don't have a local psilocybin, service center or a practice to get back to it, then one way to get back to it is absolute chaos. Everything breaks down, and then you find God through that moment of despair.
Oh, well, I heard recently that the reason why religion goes up during war is for survival needs. Like it
Oh,
gives you a cohesive
yeah,
identity. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's many different lenses to look through these things through. But, some people would say, oh, war is a fight over scarce resources. Well, scarcity is an illusion.
yeah. Today it really is. Yeah, where it's
Especially
more.
on planet Earth, where we have all these
No,
incredible renewable
totally.
resources. But then other people would say, oh, war is a systematic way to destroy wealth because
Yeah,
central banks print too much money and then
yeah,
there's too much money around, got to burn it somehow.
yeah. Very true.
And a really quick way to do that is
Yeah,
with a war,
yeah.
arguably the fastest way.
Yeah, no, for sure it is the fastest way. This is one thing I wanted to say too, is I've been kind of noodling in this on this idea of like, I feel intuitively that I'm called to do this work, but it's sometimes hard to say exactly, articulate the words and have the words really mean something. And recently I've just come across this idea that's been settling in really well, which is that if you think about consciousness as the finite volume or amount of earthly human consciousness we have is being really our most precious possession. So you take the number of people and then you take the degree of their attention that they're able to harness. I can, in a sober state, if I'm really focused and alert and I'm rested and I feel good, I can work on my craft, do my thing, and contribute to the world. And that contribution is what we experience as prosperity and the economy and civilization. If you had, by contrast, a world where everyone was like so depressed or anxious or incapable of doing anything, they would all need support. It would all crumble and fall apart. There would be nothing, and everything wouldn't be able to provide food. Farmers need to be able to work hard, need to be able to plan for their crops and buy the right seed. They need to do everything, but so does the accountant and the lawyer and everybody needs to do their job well in order for us to be to experience prosperity. So, with a world today that is experiencing just, I think, astronomical rates of mental conditions, mental issues, the number of people who are on SSRIs, like 1 out of every 4 women, 40 to 60 years old, like the rates of prescribing them for children are going way up. It's a clue that people are just not mentally well across a society. And so, what are we doing here? We're trying to improve the overall conscious potential of human beings.
Mhm.
And so, when someone comes to us that's been on SSRIs, or they've been so depressed they can't even work, and they don't their relationships are falling apart because of some past trauma and they can't get over it, and they use psilocybin and work with our facilitators and our team and the community and your videos and all the things, and they come out of it in the backside like, this really changed my life. Now they can go be in a relationship, have children, contribute to their local community in a way that wasn't possible before. And I that for me is, I would condense all that to say something like, we're we're maximizing the conscious potential for the human species. But that's the breakdown of what I sort of how I'm noodling about it, and
Mm.
why that, like, when I explain, I'm like, oh my God, I would love to live in a world where people are fully aware and living their best life, simply
Mhm.
put.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the human potential movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much untapped potential in human flourishing. It's like, come on, we can
Yeah.
do
I know.
it.
I
Let's
know.
I really do hope that we are transcending out of, although it's not looking that way, scarcity consciousness into truly abundant consciousness. And really, I do think psychedelics are helpful here when used judiciously for reconditioning ourselves to values that are in alignment with that
Mhm.
abundance.
The most helpful, I would say, is there's nothing more helpful in the world than psychedelics for moving people back to a state of harnessing their conscious capabilities.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
I
what
think
it
an
names something,
argument
right?
can be
Yeah,
made. Well, I mean, I think it's needs to be paired with practices, that our wisdom lineages have taught us. So, and grounded in
for
discipline.
sure. Maybe
And
I'm overstating it or missing something, but I look at like the numbers of the people, particularly on these psych meds, because I think those people are the ones that are most in experiencing trouble in their life. And like, what are better solutions that people have?
not many. That's why they're
You know?
looking for,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's only so far you can get with talk therapy and some of the other therapeutic modalities. I mean, yeah, it just nothing is as powerful for shutting down your default mode network and default programming than psychedelics.
yeah. So, I mean, I just want to get that out. I'm glad we both got some good ideas, and I like these podcasts because they inspire other ideas to write about on Twitter or X or post about on TikTok or Instagram. You know, we're trying to the point as I see why we're trying to produce so much content is number one, by producing content, I feel that there's like a pipeline of like, well, I have to get new ideas, and then new ideas help us craft this experience. If you're not exploring things, reading books, reading different articles or videos, then how can we get new ideas in? And this is an excuse to say like this is our platform to showcase some ideas. Some may be half baked, some may be really well prepared, and we present them as like this is what we believe. But either way, it like gets the juices flowing. So yeah, we're at time. So thank you again. I love you and peace.
Thank you. I
It's
love
good.
you too.